So we are taking these principles in sections. So this is the fourth session on principles, but it's still chapter 1 of the textbook. And so hello and welcome to Miracles on High Plains. My name is Jonica, and our reader today is David S. Before we get into the reading, I just want to give a little preview of some of the terms and themes that we'll be discussing today. And these are just a selection of the ones that caught my attention. The first ones with gratitude, honor, inspiration, freedom, blessings, and grace. Obviously, the Holy Spirit would be pleased if these are things that are on your mind, that if your attention goes towards gratitude as an aspect of love, inspiration as a way of receiving inner guidance from within. And so they will all appear in our reading today. And they'll talk about, the next one is the proper function of the mind. This is the way the mind was intended to be used, the way the Creator intended our minds to be used. And so that's what the healed mind does, is it's restored to its proper function. This can be contrasted with the mind being possessed by illusions, where you and I have an ego experience that feels like we're prisoners within our own mental framework. And that results in feeling like we're empty, we're devoid of love. They call it an empty shell. And so healing is the uprooting of all those notions, meaning if they are rooted into your past and your mental experience, healing is going to uproot those things to free us. We'll also talk about the difference, and this is a favorite topic of mine, between indiscriminate miracles, or miracles that you or I attempt to do of our own power and of our own will, versus Christ-controlled miracles, which are inspired from within. That will bring us into a more clear understanding of the difference between Christ's guidance, direct communication, and revelations of the divine order. And if we have enough time in this session, we'll then do a high-level review of several different forms of spiritual communication. So that's a lot for one session. And with that, we'll get into principle number 31.
Miracles should inspire gratitude, not all. Man should thank God for what he really is. The children of God are very holy, and the miracle honors their holiness. God's creations never lose their holiness, although it can be hidden. The miracle uncovers it and brings it into the light where it belongs. Holiness can never be really hidden in darkness, but man can deceive himself about it. This illusion makes him fearful, because he knows in his heart it is an illusion, and he exerts enormous efforts to establish its reality. The miracle sets reality where it belongs. Eternal reality belongs only to the soul, and the miracle acknowledges only the truth. It thus dispels man's illusions about himself and puts him in communion with himself and God.
So this is just one principle, but there's a lot of territory in this one principle. So we'll unpack it, break it apart for purposes of understanding its meaning. So, first, what is the proper response towards a miracle? It should inspire gratitude, a sense of gratefulness for to be a part of a creative, miraculous experience. But a miracle is not the same as all. All should be, which is reverent, deep, profound reverence, is, it says in another place, reserved only for the creator. All is reserved only for the creator. So we're not in all of miracles, but the proper attitude is to be grateful to participate in a miracle. It's a way of being thankful for what God is. And so the more profound lesson here is that the Creator has extended part of Himself into us. It's called the divine gift in Course in Miracles. Our spiritual nature is eternal and shares the same essence of as the Creator. And therefore, the children of God are very holy. And the miracle is a way of recognizing and honoring that inherent holiness that is a part of our spiritual nature, which can never be lost. However, our holiness can be hidden from our awareness. This is where we talked about a pot of gold can be covered over, buried, and covered over by dirt, can be hidden. And the role of the miracle, the entire scope of this course, is to uncover our true holiness and bring it into the light where it belongs. That's the Course of Miracles right there. There's more after that happens, which is beyond the scope of this course. So, but you would acknowledge that bringing your own holiness out into the light where it belongs is a major healing. So, in truth, this holiness can only temporarily be kept from your awareness, but it can never remain that way permanently because your holiness is eternal. However, in the confused state, the fearful state, you and I, mankind, exerts enormous efforts to make the illusions seem true, to substitute dark thoughts, miscreations of our own mind in place of holiness and make that our reality. So, therefore, we can summarize the role of the miracle is to restore awareness of reality to your own mind, to sweep away the illusions and set reality where it belongs. And when we say reality, we mean eternal reality. Your soul awakens to the eternal truth. Okay, and then we'll save that last line for later. Susie had a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on that first line about gratitude. I've been asking the Holy Spirit a question. I won't go into whatever about something I don't understand or something I'm conflicted about. And this morning, after doing the lesson, I don't know what anything is for, or I can't, all of those, I can't perceive my own best interest. And I had this just clarity downloaded into my mind. It was just amazing. And I was making my bed and I just said, oh my, I had this enormous amount of gratitude. Not all, it wasn't like all, like oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. It was, wow, thank you so much, Holy Spirit, for helping me understand this and looking to see it differently. And I just had it was just this enormous amount of gratitude. And every time that happens to me, it's a miracle, a change in my thinking, I do experience just gratitude, not all, just like gratitude. So I just wanted to share that. And also I didn't understand that, last year or the year before or whatever. And now it's so understandable to me. It's not all, because it happens all the time if I study and keep doing this course. Anyway, so it's just enormous gratitude. And yeah, I just wanted to share that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I'm glad you did. I just wanted to comment, miracles are natural. And Susie said all this happened while she was making her bed. All right. These aren't what we would call enormously profound uh, situations. They're very ordinary situations that are become extraordinary experiences. There's a real indicator of a miracle there. It's something that's the laws of eternity striking step with a moment in time. All right, we'll go on.
Christ inspires all miracles, which are really intercessions. They intercede for man's holiness and make his perceptions holy. By placing him beyond the physical laws, they raise him into the sphere of celestial order. In this order, man is perfect. The soul never loses its communion with God. Only the mind needs atonement. The miracle joins in the atonement of Christ by placing the mind in the service of the Spirit. This establishes the proper function of the mind and corrects its errors.
Hmm. So this principle gets a star from me, meaning, yes, they're all good. I especially want to call your attention to this. So the opening line, Christ inspires all miracles, which are really intercessions, is something that many Course in Miracles students have some confusion around because they assume it's the Holy Spirit is the source of the miracle. And so before we dive into that, let me just give a little background. We're not here with miracles to establish a theology and to make all these rules of this is the way this works, that's the way that works. The goal here is to help bring you inner peace, free you from fear, so that you can be at inner peace. That's the goal. Everything else will take care of itself if inner peace fills your life and extends out to others. However, there are principles that are working, and the Course teaches them. And so a miracle, remember, keep this in mind, a miracle is very much a time-based experience. In many cases, when a miracle is needed, it's needed right now. And if you wait a day, that moment passes. So a miracle is all about effective interactions in time. And Christ is the one that operates in that modality to say, do this now. This person that is in front of you or that you're aware of needs your help now. And we'll explore this in more detail in the next few principles. But that momentary impulse to act on behalf of helping another is inspired by Christ. You can think of it as an intercession of someone who's temporarily confused regarding their own true nature. And so they intercede for man's holiness and help to make their perceptions, restore their self-respect, restore a sense. It's a way of saying to another person, you matter. You matter. To a person that perhaps has lost sight of that and believes in an empty shell of themselves. And so these things are all function beyond the realm of physical laws of gravity and time. They are ways of healing one's awareness of reality, which is another way of saying that is it raises you in to the celestial sphere. It raises one into an awareness of a cosmic view of how we fit into the larger plan of love, the plan of creation. In that order, man is perfect. And for those of you that recall, it's a shift from a horizontal experience of time into a vertical awareness of relationship to the entire cosmos, a relationship to eternity. And so that shift is a miracle. The soul is always in that state of awareness. But of course, our conscious mind is not always in that state of awareness. So we're talking about a shift in the soul consciousness, which is needed by the ordinary conscious mind. And these last few lines are really crucial. It places the mind in the service of the spirit, which establishes the proper function of the mind, correcting its errors. So the improper function of the mind is to believe that its identity rests in the flesh, in the body, and that the mind is here to serve the body. That would be the upside down version. The miracle helps restore the mind to its proper function, its proper relationship to the soul and to the spirit. And so this is really what it's all about, is helping one to remember the eternal truth that you are a soul in God's creation and that you have a role to play. Your part is essential in God's plan for salvation. Julie?
Thank you so much, Jonica. So you kind of answered my question because everything that you just said confirms what my question was, but I suppose just for purposes of self-integration, it sounds to me like what I would phrase as continually placing myself in that posture of least resistance to understanding that there are always two processes rolling at the same time, and that I have a choice to pay attention to only one or acknowledge that there are two, and that whatever the details of the lower process are not as important as maintaining an open channel to that higher process, and maybe looking, if I need to, looking there for the value of either what's already happened or what's possible or what my role might be based on what higher power wants from me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, yes, yes.
Thank you.
And one form, there's many forms that can take. Let's say I'm out and about in the world and there's people around me. My mind could be occupied if, am I looking good to these people? And that, am I in a way that they're going to like me? I'm very self-conscious of how I appear and how I act, and will they accept me? Or I could be miracle minded and aware of the truth of myself, goes beyond my physical level, and that I have a role to play in allowing peace to extend through me out into the world. And that shifts me. We would say, to use your language, Julie, that would become the path of least resistance. That'd be the awareness that there's peace within me that can be brought out into the world, and that I have a part to play in it. And when I serve in that function, I become more peaceful. To have peace, teach peace to others to have it. So the proper function of the mind, the atonement places the mind in service of the spirit. So there's a joining of your conscious will with the eternal purpose of spirit, places the mind in its proper role. And this brings about insight, peace. You can even do this while making the bed. Susie?
Yeah, it goes back to when you say purpose, what is this for? If I go out in the world wherever I'm going, what is this for? You know, it really helps me. What is this for? And if the purpose is for love and to join with the Holy Spirit, I'm good. I'm going to have a fine, whatever. If I give the purpose to my ego, it's entirely different. So, I go to the market because I need groceries, but I'm not exactly sure if that's what it's for. It might be to join with the cashier and have a conversation. So it's just so much different, like I just ask myself a lot, what is this for? Anyway, yeah, that's it.
Yeah. I couldn't help but thinking, this is diverging a little bit, but years ago, I used to get invitations to go to these corporate sponsored dinners. And they were at very nice restaurants. They were at some of the finest restaurants in this area. And I thought the reason I was going there was to have a good meal. Right. Well, on one level, of course, that, you're going to a fine restaurant, there's a meal and everything. But now I realize that life has more meaning than just eat, drink, and be merry. That there is a purpose which has not yet been fully disclosed to my awareness in the moment. And so now, asking the question that Susie mentioned is, what is this for? Opening the mind to Holy Spirit guidance before we do anything leaves us ready to be in a miracle ready state of mind. Okay, we'll go on to number 33.
33. Miracles honor man because he is lovable. They dispel illusions about him and perceive the light in him. They thus atone for his errors by freeing him from his own nightmares. They release him from a prison in which he has imprisoned himself, and by freeing his mind from illusions, they restore his sanity. Man's mind can be possessed by illusions, but his spirit is eternally free. If a mind perceives without love, it perceives an empty shell and is unaware of the spirit within it. But the atonement restores the soul to its proper place. The mind that serves the spirit is invulnerable.
Mm-hmm. So miracles can be written understood from many perspectives. Let's look at this paragraph. One perspective is you're with somebody else who has lost their sense of self, who is feeling lost by their own admission, not by your judgment, but their own admission, and needs a miracle, and you're with them. Miracles honor that person because his very nature is lovable. We read earlier, we are holy beings. And a miracle honors that holiness, but to do so requires some help in dispelling illusions about himself so that he can begin to perceive the light in him, begin to perceive his own self-worth. And as I think everyone here knows, many times you get stuck in a rut. You can't do that for yourself. You can't see beyond your own prison, your own nightmare. And it takes somebody else to come along and honor who you are for you to begin to entertain it for yourself. And so a miracle then releases a person from prison that they've imposed upon themselves, and helps them to look beyond their own illusions and begin the process of restoring their sanity. So here is one of my favorite descriptions of the ego prison. And we don't mean a physical place. We're talking about a state of mind. And I believe it's one that everyone has visited. Everyone. So it's in your experience. It's a state of mind which feels very limiting, very hopeless, very empty. It causes one to perceive a lack of love and to think of themselves as an empty shell. This is a visual, this is a metaphor, is I've got nothing. I'm just a shell here, an outer covering, but within I feel all meaningless and hopeless, unaware of the spirit within. And the atonement corrects that error. And so I have this, as I said, I'm really fond of this. I found this image on the internet of this statue that depicts one way of saying feeling like I'm empty, an empty shell, lack of love, hollow, despair. And so in that state, no one can create. In that state, what are you to do? You can create with or without love in that state. You can use the power of your mind to then make illusions seem real, or to recognize the truth as reality. If you create with your mind without love, then you hollow out the inner shell. You reinforce the idea of inner emptiness. And ultimately, this becomes a depression for which one has very difficult time escaping. This emptiness then provides a screen for the misuse of projection. So onto this emptiness, the mind can dump all kinds of notions of despair and hopelessness and lovelessness. It's a dark place. I think dark nightmare is an apt description of that. And of course, there's many levels. Some people go to extremes in this. Others are more fortunate to avoid the extremes. So this kind of projection is what we call inappropriate projection. It's when you believe that the emptiness or lack of despair is real, it exists in you, and that you can fill your emptiness with your own plan for healing, your own ideas instead of truth. And so many people resort to their drug of choice or to their numbing agent of choice in order to try to fill their emptiness with some substance instead of truth. But it really doesn't matter. You can be a compulsive gambler and fill yourself with the experience of betting money on roulette wheels or something like that. It doesn't, as long as one believes that they can do it by themselves, it's true that they will inappropriately use the power of their mind in order to fill the quote hole in their soul. So miracles are a way of recognizing all this prison cell of the mind is not necessary, is but a contrived storyline, a construct that has no truth in it, and to set things right. David?
Miracles restore the soul to its fullness. By atoning for lack, they establish perfect protection. The strength of the soul leaves no room for intrusions. The forgiven are filled with the soul, and they forgive in return. It is the duty of the released to release their brothers. The forgiven are the means of atonement. Those released by Christ must join in releasing their brothers, for this is the plan of the atonement. Miracles are the way in which minds which serve the Spirit unite with Christ for the salvation or release of all God's creations. 35. Miracles are expressions of love, but it does not follow that they will always be effective. I am the only one who can perform miracles indiscriminately because I am the atonement. You have a role in the atonement, which I will dictate to you. Ask me which miracles you should perform. This spares you exhaustion because you will act under direct communication.
I'm really feeling called to speak to number 35 here because there is a subtle point that is we want to make now that is often missed by students of Course in Miracles, and that is the difference between a miracle performed indiscriminately. We will relabel that as an indiscriminate miracle. This is not good. Well, it's not bad, but it's not the plan. That's not what we're guiding here for. Versus a miracle which is guided by Christ. So let's bring this out into relief. I was thinking this idea. Please evaluate I'm role playing here. This is not me speaking. Please consider the following statement. What would you say of it? I have a wonderful day lined up. I've got 5 or 6 miracles planned. Well, I think it's obvious that I've got a plan. You want to make God laugh? Tell him your plan. So I've already decided what's needed, what the solution is, and I'm going to go out and initiate it myself. Now that's an extreme version, but an indiscriminate miracle is a miracle that we take of our own initiative, independent of inner guidance, because we want to do good. By the way, indiscriminate miracles are done by people who care, who are trying to be helpful, are doing what they think is the best, but it lacks insight and wisdom in that it's initiated out of my own little mind as a solution to the situation in front of me. It's an indiscriminate miracle. We so we're and this there's a version of Course in Miracles where they talk about Edgar Casey. And in that version, it says that Edgar Casey, eventually he became popular. He would receive 1,000 letters a day. And he felt compelled to respond to every one of them. And so he exhausted himself by indiscriminate miracles. He felt if a letter came in, it was his duty to respond to it rather than waiting for inner guidance to direct which ones he should respond to. So there's the difference. We have a role in the atonement. Our part is essential in God's plan, but our role will be dictated to you. This is a Christ-controlled miracle, a one where didn't we read just previously that Christ will inspire all miracles? So Christ-directed miracles are not indiscriminate. They are identified by the Christ within you as being needed right now with this person that you're encountering. So ask me which miracles you should perform. Otherwise, you'll make the mistake of Edgar Casey and exhaust yourself because of acting upon your own guidance. A miracle, when you ask, you will receive what's called direct communication. And this is one of our deeper dives on what do we mean by direct communication. And I really want to hold off on that until the closing minutes of our session here so that we can handle a number of other ideas at the same time. But just remember that a Christ-guided miracle operates under direct communication. It's a term that we'll use and contrast it with indirect communication.
"36. Christ-controlled miracles are part of the atonement, but Christ guidance is personal and leads to personal salvation. The impersonal nature of miracles is an essential ingredient because this enables me to control their distribution. Christ guidance leads to the highly personal experience of revelation. This is why it involves personal choice. A guide does not control, but he does direct, leaving the following up to you. Lead us not into temptation means guide us out of our own errors. Take up thy cross and follow me means recognize your errors and choose to abandon them by following my guidance. Remember that error cannot really threaten truth, which can always withstand it. Only the error is really vulnerable. You are free to establish your kingdom where you see fit, but the right choice is inevitable if you remember this: the soul is in a state of grace forever. Man's reality is only his soul. Therefore, man is in a state of grace forever.
And the miracle restores your awareness to the reality that you and everyone else are in a state of grace forever. Okay, so the following goes deeper. So I want to acknowledge this is not beginner material for miracles. I would call this advanced. Just acknowledging that as we dive in to the difference between Christ's control and Christ's guidance. These are different forms of communication and direction. It's not, because it's advanced, it's not essential that you, in your practice of miracles, that you have a intellectual grasp of all the details here, but it would be remiss if I were to just skip over it and pretended like it wasn't there. I mean, it's right in front of us, so we're gonna make this distinction. So, first of all, let's talk about Christ's control. Miracles are controlled by Christ. Our part, it consists of 3 phases, of which the first 2 are voluntary on your part, and the third part is automatic. The first part is to be willing to listen to the inner voice. This is listen, learn, do, and we covered this in the previous session. First part is voluntary on your part to listen to the inner voice. Number 2, learn to correct errors in your mind. Learn to distinguish the errors of the ego from the guidance of spirit. Learn to forgive and not get caught up in an ego storm. Learn to correct errors. And when you do those 2, you are ready and willing. And then the last one is the action phase, where Christ-controlled miracles comes into play. That involves the momentary exchange between you and a brother that brings about, for the purposes of healing. That's where a Christ-controlled miracle comes into effect. You could say that the impulse of what to do in that moment does not come from your little mind. It comes from the mind of Christ. And when it appears in your mind and you're listening to the voice and you know how to recognize the truth from the error, it feels like it's compelling that this is the right thing to do and I'm the right person to do it in this moment. And so it's done without fear and hesitation. It's a Christ-directed miracle. Christ-controlled miracle. Are there any questions on that? We'll go over this again and again just to revisit it and try to understand it from different angles. Now we want to distinguish that between guidance, Christ guidance, which is voluntary. I can guide you a certain direction, but you might choose not to follow that guidance. Christ's guidance is personal. It's for you and you alone. It doesn't involve someone else needing your help. It leads to personal salvation. And a guide does not control, but he does direct, leaving the decision to follow up to you. And so, what are we talking about? We're talking about an experience of revelation where you have an experience of inspiration, of revelation in your mind, where literally some eternal truth, the reality of eternal laws and truth, come into your mind. And in that moment, you experience it as true and know the truth is true. It's a leap into an eternal awareness. So Christ's guidance will lead you, direct you into that state. And it says elsewhere that Christ will guide you there when you're ready. Obviously, Christ is not going to guide you there when in a moment where you're not ready. And when you're ready, requires that you be temporarily free from fear. You're not ready if you're afraid there. So two different experiences, and we'll restate this and reformulate it again very shortly to try to further illustrate the difference there. Again, this is more advanced. It's not, I would say, you find me 100 miracle students, and I'd be willing to wager that 90% of them would not be able to correctly distinguish, make these distinctions. So it's this is an opportunity to go deeper for those of you that feel ready to engage at that level. David?
Atonement undoes all errors in this respect, and thus uproots the real source of fear. Whenever God's reassurances are experienced as threat, it is always because you are defending misplaced and misdirected loyalty. That is what projection always involves. Error is lack of love. When man projects this onto others, he does imprison them, but only to the extent that he reinforces errors that they have already made. This makes them vulnerable to the distortions of others, since their own perception of themselves is distorted. The miracle worker can only bless, and this undoes their distortions and frees them from prison.
I've been in my own workbook lessons, workbook lesson 140, my mind holds only the thoughts I think with God. And in that review, it makes it very clear how the mind uses illusions to defend its own idols, to defend its own misplaced loyalties, to try to keep God away at a safe distance. Know that these are instinctual defense mechanisms of the ego that would try to keep your own self-creation intact. But in so doing, of course, it drives you in the direction of fear. And so this is done when we experience God's promises as threat. We then defend ourselves with our own illusions. So the purpose of the miracle is to uproot those defense systems and to replant, so to speak, metaphorically, replant your investment, your beliefs in the Holy Spirit's promises for healing and peace. All right, we're going to go a little bit longer here and then wrap up.
37. Miracles are examples of right thinking. Reality contact at all levels becomes strong and accurate, thus permitting correct delineation of intra and interpersonal boundaries. As a result, the doer's perceptions are aligned with truth as God created it. 38. A miracle is a correction factor introduced into false thinking by me. It acts as a catalyst, shaking up erroneous perception and reorganizing it properly. This places man under the atonement principle, where his perception is healed. Until this has occurred, revelation of the divine order is impossible.
Let's deal with that last one first. This places man under the atonement where his perception is healed. Prior to that, revelation of the divine order is impossible. For other words, while your perceptions are looking at illusions as if they were true and looking at the illusion of yourself as if that were true, revelation of the divine order is blocked because of that confusion. So in order, one of the conditions for revelation, which we talked about a moment ago under Christ's guidance, is to reorganize one's thinking under the plan of the atonement principle, where our perceptions are healed. And then revelation of the divine order comes naturally. Christ is able to guide our minds naturally into this experience of heavenly insight. Number 37. This is for me, one of the most important insights of them all. This explains vast things if you know the meaning, if you have the background understanding. So with miracles, it corrects level confusion by making contact with reality at all levels strong and accurate. So level clarity comes about as a result of miracles. In the absence of miracles, level confusion should be assumed to be the default. Call that step 1 and 2. Step 1, level confusion. Step 2, level clarity. Now, I think this is the biggest insight. Susie, David, Julie, Heather, David, Noel, Dwayne, Jerry, Jeff, this tells me a lot. As a result of bringing about level clarity, that you know and understand that the body works according to physical laws, that the mind operates according to the laws of mind and healing, and that the spirit operates according to the laws of eternity. That's level clarity. You know the difference. As a result of level clarity, the doer is able to set proper boundaries. The way it says it here is level clarity permits correct delineation of intrapersonal boundaries, boundaries within yourself. You recognize the difference between mind, body, and spirit within yourself. And as we said before, the miracle helps the mind to assume its correct function. And also, it helps you to delineate interpersonal boundaries so that your relationships with others and their body, mind, and spirit is correctly delineated. So I have a corollary of this, which I assume to be true until I proven otherwise, that in the absence of level clarity, if I'm confused with all the levels, then it inhibits or blocks my intrapersonal sense of boundaries. I'm confused about the difference between my own eternal spirit, my mind that's learning, and my body that's just here in the world of flesh. If I'm confused about that, then in my relationships with others and setting boundaries with them is also going to be impaired. So one of my things, so my statement is, in order to clarify healthy boundaries, one needs level clarity. Here it says that the opposite, the inversion of that is that level clarity is needs to be strong and accurate, and this permits proper setting of boundaries, identification of boundaries. And this is so I have a lot of personal opinions on these matters, and I don't want to misrepresent A Course in Miracles and all that, but nevertheless, these are beliefs that I have that I don't mind sharing, and that is that teaching healthy boundaries is so difficult because you first need to teach level clarity. And for other words, you need to take algebra 1 before you take algebra 2. You need to take level clarity first and then teach healthy boundaries. And what is often done in healing circles, just generally, is they attempt to go right into teaching healthy boundaries without understanding level clarity. And therefore, it becomes difficult, if not confusing. David W., you had your hand up.
Thank you, Jonica. I think what you just said is one of the most important things about the Course. For me, in my own personal experience, that level confusion is inevitable. If we look at your steps, listen to the inner voice, and remember that the ego always speaks first, always speaks first. The second step is learn to correct the errors of that ego mind. So you've got to, and what happens for me is that level confusion. I say, well, wait a minute. They did do this. They did do that. And you can't trust them. But I go to level confusion because it's difficult for me to surmount isn't the right word, to raise above that, because I can see the level confusion that on some level, the ego perception is true on a certain level. And that's what I'm going to hear first. So there's almost inevitably a source of confusion between me getting clarity. But I love this idea of reality contact at all levels. So there's an ego reality. Yes, that's the truth. But that's not the whole reality. We'll have to remember that there is another domain that I have to shift to. So I think this is so important. Thank you.
Yeah. So I've often, thank you, David. So true. I've often teased the idea of a workshop on boundaries that I've never delivered on. And part of it is that I think it would take too long because level clarity takes a while to not to just hear the words, but begin to practice in your own life. Clarity is not a theory. Clarity is a state of mind. And level clarity means you have to have practiced these things frequently enough so that you know what it means to be clear in your mind and not confused. And that's not something one does in a quick workshop. That's something one does in an extended program. Susie?
Yeah, wow, Jonica, I don't know that you have ever, maybe I've never heard it that way, but I'm not sure that you've ever explained it that way. Um, Certainly I didn't hear it, and that makes so much sense, like David Weston just said. Our ego, wants to set the boundaries most of the time when we're right. And, what's best for me? And I have to, get away from all this chaos and, our, but if we're in level clarity, we're setting boundaries with our higher self.
Yes.
And just like like what we were saying before, what is everything for? What is the purpose? How can I set boundaries with love? It's so that just was another miracle, right? I'm not in awe, but I'm in amazing gratitude for hearing that. It was really amazingly answered so many questions why probably we can set healthy boundaries sometimes because we're not doing it with our right mind and we're seeing everybody as bodies. Thank you so much for that, Jonica.
Yeah, it's yes, yes, yes to everything you said, Susie. By the way, Susie, not met this is the only place I can find in A Course in Miracles where they explicitly state about boundaries. Now, there may be other places where they use some other words and indirectly refer to it. I haven't really noticed there, but this is the one firm statement about boundaries here. And so it doesn't come up very often as we read in the material. Julie?
Thank you, Jonica. So, the way that I'm experiencing the information on level clarity today is that, again, this isn't something that I can generate, make happen. The best I can do is place myself in the posture of least resistance to be gifted level clarity. Like it's not mine to take. I don't make it. I don't achieve it. I don't suddenly understand it. It's a gifting is how it seems to me.
Yeah, can I respond to that? So I would say, Julie, that our part is to learn the ABCs here. What is the body level and the law, to recognize that the body level has its biological laws that it follows, and that we can learn. And then the mind has its own set of healing principles that it operates by, and that the spirit has, being transcendent of those two, the spirit has its own eternal principles that it operates by. Those ABCs can be read and studied, and I think understood. I believe the people in this group are making good progress towards grasping all that. But the application of it to your daily life is more like the insights that you're talking about, Julie, where drawing the connection between those three levels, and in a moment where you're a bit confused, that requires an inspiration in the moment. It involves like the light of clarity needs to come. And that's something that you can open yourself to and pray for. But it is, as you said, a gift in response to your being open and praying to it. So to use your words, the place of least resistance would be open and ready to receive clarity, knowing that your mind is confused, and asking to receive insights. And sometimes they don't come immediately, but they do come.
May I add something, Jonica?
Please.
I feel inspired to acknowledge to myself that that happens on every level of the path. So, for example, say there's someone in the class today who it's their very first class. That setup, if you will, that opportunity for alchemy is always present if we put ourselves in that place of least resistance. And then it just builds, like our energy and our resonance just builds the more we practice it.
Good point. Yes. Said another way, you don't have to be an advanced student to get clarity. You have to be willing. And like you say, path of least resistance. Yes. Thank you. Very nice clarification. David, I saw your hand up as well.
Yeah, I love what we're talking about right now, and it's so in line with the lessons in the workbook. That, today is lesson 25. I do not know what anything is for. And that's so emblematic of level confusion. And that a miracle is a correction in our knowing, that we begin to know what something is for.
Yeah.
And the way and level confusion, I'm like starting my 5th year in this course, and it's taken. I've been so confused about level confusion, and level confusion occurs every day,
Yes.
all often, and the correction factor helps me to learn what something is for, and it is for our higher good and for delineating boundaries and spreading the love. I'm very grateful for what you're sharing today and for the lessons and for what we're doing. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I appreciate you saying, I'm very confused about level confusion. We read in one of the earlier principles that is the basis of all the mind sickness and confusion, is not understanding that eternal spirit operates according to principles very different than the mind and the body, and not knowing how those mechanisms, of course, people are confused if they don't know those things. My goal would be in the future is to be able to make it more clear to students in less than 5 years. Yeah.
Good goal.
Good goal. Yeah. Go ahead, David. Well, David W.
I just wanted to say the same thing. I've been studying the course with you for 5 years, and we've talked about level confusion a lot, but now I really get it and why it's so tough, because there is a truthfulness on different levels. And on an egoic level, there is truth to what the ego is telling me, but there's another domain, another level, reality contact on another level. So there's always another way of looking at it. And Jonik, I just feel really clear about this today. And I feel like David, thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
I feel much more clarity about the level confusion that I have every day. I go, well, wait a minute. They did do this, and I can't just ignore that. So I love it. Thank you so much. I have a felt experience and understanding of it.
There you go. Yes, very good. Wanted to add one more thing about the level confusion, why it's so strong, is because from the point of view of the body versus the point of view of the eternal spirit versus the point of view of the mind, they don't agree with one another. They disagree. They have different opinions about what matters and what is true, and they are so to speak, arguing, that not literally, but they disagree. And so the mind winds up being what? Confused and not knowing what to believe. Susie?
I just want to make one comment that I can just feel the gratitude in this meeting today. And that was the first line, I think, of the first, was it Principle 31? I don't know. But I can just feel the gratitude, for the clarity that we're all experiencing. And wouldn't this also be like, the body is used, the body becomes holy when it becomes when it's a communication tool and it's used for the purposes that we're talking about, which adds another layer of clarity for me. And I know the course mentions Jung, right? Right? Doesn't the course mention? And I'm taking an 8-week class about him or about his, and he says that the ego is like it becomes an instrument, it's a tool to help us get to our higher mind, or something like that. So I've been looking at my ego and my body in a different way, saying, okay, what is this for? How can I use this to get to my higher mind, or so to speak. So, yeah, Jonica, this has been just a mind blowing breakthrough, amazing class. I just have to ditto it all.
Right.
And I just want to end with so big deal if it takes 5 years or 4 years or whatever. We're certainly through the journey of the 5 years a whole lot better off each year than we were the year before. Right?
Yes.
So,
Yes.
and the Holy Spirit will only meet us where we're at. So if I'm not ready until I'm ready, well, then I'm not ready till I'm ready.
There you go. Thank you for that
Yeah.
insight. It really is. It's not measured in years, it's measured in progress. Yeah, thank you. Go ahead, Noel. Noel?
Re referring to something Susie just said, this morning I read some comments on one of the lessons that I'm doing. It's from Tom Wakechild. He says, and this has to do with level confusion for me, you can change the goal of the body from supporting your ego's belief in fear and separation to become a means for the awakening to the truth.
Mm-hmm.
When you do so, I've puzzled about this long time. When you do so, the body will serve that new purpose.
Yes.
The body can now become the means to reawaken your sleeping mind to the truth of who you really are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that is a outcome of getting clarity about the levels. Yes. It repurposes everything. Very good. So, well, thank you all for that very heartfelt, stimulating discussion. We're going to wrap up here, which really is a way of both summarizing and then also introducing ideas that can be explored again later. So this is my summation based on my interpretation of Course in Miracles. And it has to do with looking at experiences that we can have right here on earth and in time that are really ways in which we get in touch with our soul. I call it communications. And so I've arbitrarily chosen to divide them along 7 lines. It's my divisions, not although they're based on what I've taken from the Course of Miracles and also an intuitive sense. So you can imagine my thoughts hold only the thoughts I think with God, that all of the first 2 would be very consistent with sharing your mind with God. And so then when we get into number 3, it gets maybe more into terms you're familiar with. We're talking about the Holy Spirit's communication. Turns out the Holy Spirit is what's called indirect communicator. The Holy Spirit is translating what the Creator has for you. For in other words, these are not messages from her. She's delivering the message. She's the messenger. Therefore, it's referred to as indirect communication from your higher mind to your lower mind. And this has a certain role in healing and correcting your mind of its errors, which is central, as we know, to salvation and inner peace. It serves as a voice to confused minds. When you do the workbook lessons, particularly the first half, that's kind of really obvious that it's a message to minds that do not know what anything is for. Then we've got additional communications, and we've talked about that today, about miracles that are Christ inspired, that has a role in uniting you with others by recognizing the holiness in another. And it comes from the mind of Christ into your mind when you are ready to listen to the voice and willing to follow his guidance. Then those two are voluntary. And then the message, when that person is right in front of you that needs your help in that moment, that message comes directly into your mind. And feels like your own thought, by the way, feels like your own idea. Then when that happens, we have this transformative moment that we refer to as a holy instant. Holy instants are experiences where your soul comes into contact and recognition of another soul. Inherent in this is level clarity, that you realize that you are a soul in God's creation, and the person in front of you is a soul as well, and you're honoring that soul. That results in a holy instant. Again, I'm putting that in a slightly different category. You would be free to recombine these in other ways if you so wished. But one thing is for sure, that those two experiences are very different than revelation, which is an individual experience, sometimes occurring in the wee hours of the morning. And the Course says it's a direct form of communication. It's a form of communication from God to you. It is not prayer where you pray to God. It's a message, a personal message of the Creator to you. It reflects the original form of communication in the original state. And we read a moment ago that in order to receive these revelations, the mind must first have accepted the atonement for yourself and correct your perception, so that you can't be staring into the darkness and receive revelation. You have to be oriented to the light. And then I put a seventh one on here, which is a form that the Course refers to as being beyond words and beyond time. Let's see, I didn't use it here. I meant to use the word communion here. It's a wordless worship. It's practicing the presence of the Creator in a state where you have no request, you're not receiving messages, but you're just resting. I rest in God, in quiet and stillness. I rest in the peace of God. So it's different than attempts to communicate. I think I have some words mixed up here. Apologies for that. I'll correct that for the next edition. So different levels there, and we are, so Julie uses the language several times to put yourself in a position of least resistance. You could say that these practices put you in a position of least resistance. When you're praying, when you're honoring, when you feel gratitude, when you feel blessed, when you're listening to the voice of the Holy Spirit, when you're ready and willing to be guided into a miracle, experiencing a holy instant, all these things are preparatory for receiving the gifts which we have for us, which are unlimited gifts, are in store to those who are ready to receive them. That's as far as we're going to go today. That was a lot. There's more. We did up to principle 38 today, and we'll pick that up with next time in the next session of principle 39. So I want to thank you all for your contributions. I'm so glad that some of those issues with level confusion, level clarity, and also properly delineating boundaries after we've gotten level clarity. I'm so glad that that was more clear. Let's do this again, and so that we can accelerate our learning. And I'll look forward to sharing in that experience with you. I honor the holy blessing.
Jane, the question.
David. Wonderful reading as
Susie
always.
had a question.
No, I think Dwayne is trying to raise his hand.
Oh, I'm
Please
sorry.
forgive me.
I
Yeah,
didn't
Jonica, I
see it,
see.
Dwayne.
I'm sorry, everyone else. Just a question about the book. I might be lost, or I'm so old I have an old version.
Yeah.
I'm reading the Principles and Miracles, and they're not quite the same.
Different version, Dwayne, for this, just for this chapter here, we're using the original edition, which have pearls on the front cover. And then we'll go back to when we do chapter 2, we'll go back to the version you're using.
And have you started beginning of lessons, daily lessons yet?
I'm sorry, have I done what?
Have we started the beginning of the daily lessons?
We're not doing them in synchrony as a group. That's left up to each person individually to do at their own pace. So yes, but we're not doing them here in group format.
Okay. All right. Thank you again.
All right. You're most welcome, my friend. All right. I'll look forward. Thank you, David, for reading. Thank you all for your contributions. We'll see you again soon. Namaste.
Thanks, David. Thanks, everybody.
Welcome, everybody. Good to see everybody
Peace
Yeah.
and love.
meeting today.